What's a really scary fact that people should know about? One reason that crows and ravens are associated with death is because they would often follow armies as they marched to battle. Being both carrion birds and extremely intelligent, they realized that a large group of armed men marching on one direction meant that there would be a tasty meal of corpses to eat soon afterwards. That your spouse is the most likely person to murder you. Preaching to the choir. The love of my life had a psychotic break a few months ago and nearly killed me in a field behind my house. I remember thinking about the statistic you mentioned and the statistic that you're likely to die close to home. Obviously, I made it, and am happy to say I'm okay now. He started stalking me, and he won't accept medical help, so I had to get an EPO. Haven't seen him in maybe a month. I'm okay. Well, antibiotic-resistant bacteria are evolving faster than we can develop new antibiotics to fight them. On the positive note, some of the oldest antibiotics are now becoming effective again. As bacteria continues to evolve, they lose the resistance to the earlier antibiotics because they have not been exposed to them. The issue isn't really a scientific one, but an economic one. That is, we have the scientific means to develop antibacterial that overcome known and emerging forms of resistance. It's just not currently profitable enough to do so sustainably. The problem is that our healthcare system strongly encourages the use of generic, older antibiotics, partly for stewardship reasons, but mostly for economic ones. For example, generics are much cheaper, and thus hospitals will always rely on them first, even when epidemiology and health outcomes suggest you should try newer antibiotics instead. Because the cost of developing new antibiotics is so expensive, for example, clinical trials to support FDA approval, and because the market is so small, companies cannot make a return on investment. So, you get big companies mostly abandoning the space in favor of more lucrative markets, for example, oncology, and smaller companies, for example, MacLeod, going bankrupt shortly after bringing their drug to market. There have been legislative proposals to try to fix the market, for example, disarm, or more recently, Pasteur, but the congressional will isn't there, because anything seen as aiding the pharmaceutical industry is deemed politically radioactive. And so the problem continues to fester. We're in a sad place, where a significant number of people die of antimicrobial-resistant infections each year, over 35,000 a year in the US, per CDC's 2019 report, but not enough to generate the political will to fix it. Source: I work in science policy, including on this topic. If a bear attacks, it won't kill you immediately, it'll just start eating. Thus that horrifying story about the girl who called her mom as the bear was eating her, and the mom listened in horror at the sounds of crunching, and the girl crying, until the girl said, "Mom, I don't feel any pain anymore. Please forgive me for everything." Then she died. As a mother, I cannot even begin to imagine. Recently, a family friend and her boyfriend were attacked by a bear. It was definitely chomping on her, before her boyfriend managed to get it with the bear spray. She has some nasty wounds on her shoulder, neck, and side, where it was biting her, but will make a full recovery. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were kept at the family home until they started to decompose, in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Also, there are a lot less mummies nowadays than before, because they were eaten as medicine. Vultures circling over a house is usually because of a gas leak. They smell ethyl mercaptan, which is added to gas to give it a smell, and it's also the smell that comes from rotten meat. As a new owner of a gas stove, that made me happy for a minute, and then I remembered, there are no vultures where I live. Vultures are so cool. I remember going on a field trip to the Everglades in elementary, and the tour guide said, their extinction would mean months for the rest of us species, due to their role of mitigating diseases and harmful bacteria spreading. Their stomach acid can kill anthrax and rabies. Vultures need their moment in the sun. You can go to sleep and wake up disabled because your immune system decided part of your spinal cord looked like a tasty foreign body. Don't think too hard while dreaming, just to be safe. I was relatively fine, general health issues, and some chronic pain, but I was okay. I started walking like a drunk man randomly one week. I lost the ability to walk unassisted in just 2 weeks. Never recovered. Doctors didn't find shit, but I have a feeling I'll get diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. In a few years, we haven't checked the spine for lesions, just the brain. But yeah, it was weird. People ask me, what happened? And it's weird to say, I just got crippled out of the blue in a few weeks, never got better. In 7 states, it's illegal to film inside any kind of agricultural facility, farm, meat processing plant, etc., without the owner's permission, because someone did one time, and the video got out, and it caused a huge food recall. I work in QA for food safety, and you would not believe how hard most, not all, but most, food manufacturers try to do everything they can to follow the most lenient interpretations of food safety regulations possible. If I think about it too hard, I start feeling like I should never buy food again, and only trust what I personally grow from the earth, or catch with my bare hands. Added to add, I am going to print these responses out and give a copy to my entire team. We never get such positive feedback. You guys have genuinely brought some sunshine to a job that can sometimes feel ineffective, at best. Most medical experts recommend avoiding Tylenol while drinking alcohol, because both of these substances impact your liver. Alcohol is processed in the liver, and puts additional stress on it, while being metabolized. Tylenol also is processed in the liver, and is very toxic to it, in higher doses. The scary part is, that fatal acetaminophen and paracetamol, Tylenol, hepatotoxicity is not instant, but it is irreversible. If you overdose on Tylenol, and don't neutralize, or remove it quickly enough, the damage is done. You will die, over perhaps the next couple of days, of painful liver failure, and there is no way to save you. Edit: technically, a liver transplant could save you, if you are incredibly lucky, but your time horizon is days, and cannot be prolonged. I once worked in a middle school nurse's office, as an assistant to the nurse. The RN was only on site 3 days a week, and this was a day she was at another campus. Once had a 12-year-old girl try to OD on Tylenol. She had told a couple of kids, and those kids came to the office and told me. I called her down to the office, she was in tears. Had her mom on the phone already, and once we had eyes on her, we called EMS. Poor thing had to have her stomach pumped, but she ended up fine. We'll eventually need to find a replacement for our global banana, Cavendish, supply. Panama disease is highly virulent and spreading, and there is no known cure. Also, it's happened before. The Gros Michel was the main banana, before the Cavendish replaced it. A more fun fact than this, to lighten the mood. Banana flavoring was conceived of before Panama disease wiped out all, but the most hardy species, the modern-day Cavendish banana being the primary example. So, when you hear people say they don't like artificial banana flavoring, they're really saying that they don't like the flavor of original, real, or OG bananas. This is a pretty common misconception. Gros Michel bananas are still available in some exotic markets. I've had them, and they don't taste like fake banana flavor, but like a somewhat creamier Cavendish. Banana is just a hard flavor to replicate. What is true, though, is that a Gros Michel banana has a thicker and slippery peel, which is where all the super old cartoons about slipping on banana peels came from. The Cavendish peel isn't really slippery, so jokes about it slowly died out. There are serial killers who are really good at not getting caught, choosing victims carefully, never overhunting, and disposing of evidence. Some may have up to dozens of bodies responsible for, but no trace will ever be found. Not even bones. I was at Walmart the other day, and by the restrooms, there is a local missing persons wall. Given that it's 2024, I have a bit of a difficult time imagining that there are just dozens of people who have been missing for months to years, that have just vanished and never surfaced, in one form or another. This isn't the 50s. There are so many more ways to verify and track an individual, or at least one, who ever sees the light of day. These people are either captive, less likely, in hiding, or dead. That's difficult for me to comprehend, just as a sheer numbers game. Punching someone in the head can kill them. I often see people describing it as freak accident, or 1,000,000-to-1 shot. It's not. Never punch someone in the head if you're not willing to kill them. People need this fact ingrained enough to remember it, even in the heat of the moment. Yeah, that drunk guy who called your girlfriend a whore deserves his teeth knocked out. But is it worth killing him over? If not, don't punch. There are about 300,000 sperm whales in the ocean. They each eat 1 giant squid a day. So, there are enough giant squid in the ocean to support the consumption of 100 million giant squid a year. We have captured a live one on film, once. You'd think hippos would be lethargic and slow, but no, they're fast swimmers, and have greater bite force than a crocodile, a species famous for its bite. Hippos do not prance about in tutus, it seems. Hippos don't actually swim, they run along the bottom, because they're too muscular, and can't float. And they're very territorial and aggressive. I don't have an irrational fear of hippos. It is in fact perfectly rational. They're cool creatures, but you couldn't pay me to go near one. It's estimated that over 40 million people worldwide are victims of human trafficking, with women and children disproportionately affected. I remember someone saying that, in human history, we currently have the lowest proportion, but highest raw number of people, in slavery. One I learned here on Reddit is, you're not supposed to give newborns water, only formula. The water throws off their electrolytes, and could kill them. Not even just that, but their stomachs are tiny, and their metabolism is quick. If they drink water, instead of breast milk or formula, then they are not getting the nutrition they need. 18% of all boating accidents are caused by trying to urinate off the side of the boat. My boating instructor gave me the 18% statistic, but the Red Cross tracks accidents and deaths relating to urinating over the side, and many insurance companies warn against it, as well. I fell off the back of our pontoon boat at night, that was moving along, with my brother driving. Obviously, we had all been drinking, so, there's that. Anyway, everyone was partying and listening to loud music, and nobody noticed that I fell off initially. I watched the boat get smaller and smaller, as it moved away. I just stayed there treading water. After about 5 minutes, they finally realized I was missing, and then turned around, and got the spotlight out and found me after another several minutes. Funny thing is, that I never panicked, or was worried. Alcohol helped. Luckily, my head didn't hit the boat, or caught up in the prop. If you get furious rabies, you can die within a few days. If you get paralytic rabies, you'll slowly slip into a coma, and eventually die. It's almost always fatal, and has like a 99% death rate. Some people just go quicker than others. If there's ever a nuclear war, you're a lot more likely to survive the weapon effects, blast, heat, and radiation, than you are to be killed quickly, unless you live within a mile or two of a specific target. You're much more likely to die later, as a result of infrastructure collapse. Like, estimates as high as 90% dead within 6 to 12 months, in countries like the US. No power grid equals no heat or AC for most people. Heat stress in the summer, and hypothermia in the winter. No functional water treatment plants, or municipal water supplies in most places. Waterborne diseases like typhoid, cholera, and dysentery will come roaring back. Also, most surface waters in the US are already contaminated with giardia. With municipal water sources offline, people will die of dehydration, or they'll drink whatever they can get sick, and with no medical care, die of dehydration and shock due to diarrheal illness. No functional medical system. Hospitals won't have power, fuel, and medicine won't be delivered. Existing stocks won't be refrigerated, doctors will be dead, or abandon their posts to seek their own, or their family's survival. Fuel refineries and gas stations will be offline without a functional power grid, which means modern agriculture and food delivery systems grind to a halt, even if the physical transportation infrastructure, roads, rail lines, bridges, etc., isn't a complete shambles. People who haven't already died of dehydration, exposure, and disease will starve, or die fighting over whatever dwindling resources remain. Generational forgetfulness. We forget the hard work and efforts of previous generations, in response to dangers that existed, even while they're still alive. We can prepare for something so thoroughly, that the preparation itself can be questioned, and seem overinflated, even though the issue was only able to be handled that way, because of the preparation. An example would be vaccines. With vaccines, we have nearly eradicated quite a few diseases, yet in just a few generations, we see resurgences of some of them, because people like anti-vaxxers spring up proclaiming them as poison, or believing that non-vaccine remedies will protect them. The most dangerous month to be a medical patient in the US is July, when medical interns have started work, or been through hospital orientations. There is overconfidence, incredibly long work hours and rotations, and lack of career-obtained skills, and bedside manner. It's great to have an intern or resident, because they are enthusiastic to learn about your care, but a gap in hands-on knowledge. Chemical contamination of the air, our water, our food, the wider environment, etc., is harming us, and many life forms on Earth. We are nowhere near to having a solution for this. We are killing off living things, vital to the ecosystem, bugs, fungi, etc., we haven't even discovered yet. Even when it comes to ourselves, there are too many chemicals, in too many combinations, and too many other factors, for us to have anything close to an accurate idea, as to what each is doing to us. Scientists have found microplastics embedded in your balls, eyes, brain, kidneys, etc. We aren't actually sure what harm they may cause. Due to climate change, countries all over the world, big ones like China and Saudi Arabia, are already struggling for food and water, to the point that they go to other countries, buy land, and export that country's resources back to their own country. This is happening, in Arizona, where Saudi Arabia bought land and created a huge farm. They then used an excessive amount of Arizona's water supply to grow food for their cattle and ship it back. China is buying up chunks of Africa. One scary fact is that the human brain can continue to feel pain and other sensations, even after death. This is because the nervous system can take up to 10 minutes to shut down completely, causing involuntary muscle spasms and twitching. Additionally, some people have reported experiencing out-of-body experiences, or seeing bright lights, during near-death situations, which suggest that consciousness may persist after clinical death. COVID, SARS-CoV-2, is responsible for cognitive deficits lasting beyond infection duration, and this can be seen even for asymptomatic infections. I had the breeziest infection in the world, no symptoms, just waiting for the week to be over. Turns out, I also developed postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome from catching COVID, which affects my body and my mind constantly, and will possibly stay with me for decades. Even if you think you can deal with having COVID, the pandemic is no joke. People's lives have straight up been ruined by catching COVID, and everyone could be just one bout of the illness away from it. The entire surface of your skin is replaced every month. Earwax is a type of sweat. In a lifetime, you will have sat on a toilet for one full calendar year. Lizards communicate by doing push-ups. Scotland once chose the unicorn as its national animal. Ketchup was once used as a medicine. In ancient Greek, the word for cat was pronounced meow and spelled mew. Competitive art was once an Olympic sport. You are 10 times more likely to get bit by a New Yorker than a shark. In order to properly eat cooked monkey, it has to be charred. The reasoning is because humans and monkeys are so close genetically that a large portion of diseases will transfer over to humans if not properly cooked. There's also the possibility of getting the shakes if you eat monkey often. Again, it's because we're closely related genetically, and the hum body is not designed to process human meat for nutrition. Encephalitis and meningitis can be transmitted by sharing a joint, or a slice of pizza, or a beer, or just inhaling a sneeze. 40% mortality rate, or worse. In just a few hours, you could be a stump, trying to figure out a new way to feed yourself, or wipe your ass without arms. The human skull isn't much more durable than a melon. If you are riding a scooter, skateboard, bike, or anything similar, wear a helmet. Also, when your helmet takes a hit, or becomes more than 5 years old, you have to replace it. Source: a helmet saved my life, and it might save yours, too. Our skin absorbs microplastics from activewear. While we all have microplastics in our system, long workouts with tight-fitting activewear might have a much higher rate of microplastics entering the bloodstream than ingesting, or other means. We may have the answer soon to the link between testicular cancer and sports activities, primarily cycling, where the rates of testicular cancer are far higher. Not having sex, or masturbating for a very long time, can cause you to have mood swings. It's definitely not an excuse for committing any kind of sex offenses, of course. But just know that if you're in a bad mood, you may be sexually frustrated, and you don't even know it. That's why masturbation often calms you down. The incels are affected so strongly by this, because they naturally aren't having sex, and they often refuse to masturbate. You'd be surprised what it does to the brain. The biggest threat of climate change isn't just hotter, stronger weather. The biggest threat is the effects on the ocean, namely, 1. The collapse of the ocean's ecology, and 2. The potential shutdown of the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation. 1. Rising ocean temperatures changes the acidity of the seawater. A more acidic ocean makes it harder for shelled animals, like scallops/mussels/oysters, crabs/lobsters/shrimp, plankton, to make their shells. They will have thinner, more brittle, and irregular shells. These creatures are the base of the ocean's food chain. Without them, the rest of ocean life cannot be sustained. Hence, oceanic ecological collapse is almost certain, without aggressive focus on reducing greenhouse gases and emissions. 2. The is, basically, a huge conveyor belt of seawater, transporting warm water from the Gulf of Mexico up to the western coast of Europe. Once it mixes with colder Arctic currents, the colder, and thus denser, water sinks, cycles back through the Atlantic, until it again warms and resurfaces. This cycle has massive influence over climate, because of how the warm water impacts humidity and precipitation. Western Europe is as temperate as it is, because of the And as for the US? Without the circulating, the southern states, particularly Florida, become deserts. Think of all the agriculture those states sustain, because of their climate. All of that production would become nigh impossible. As much as I want to desperately tell people this, it doesn't exactly come off as lighthearted dinner conversation. Also, as a quick credential check, I'm a geologist, with long-held interest in paleontology. The Permian extinction, the Great Dying, provides the best comparable scenario to how a suddenly warming planet affects the oceans, hence my comments on ocean ecology. Regarding the I had a sedimentary geologist coworker, who studied sedimentary core from cenotes in Florida for their master's thesis, originally to understand hurricane cycles via transport of sediments to these cenotes. An incidental finding of his pointed to Florida experiencing prior periods of desertification, because of shutdown. If GH gases and emissions aren't curbed, he reckons that we've got a few decades, if that, before the once again shuts down.